Roy Red is an internationally recognized speaker, six-time #1 best-selling author and business acquisition and growth strategist who has shared the stage with Vice President Kamala Harris, Arnold Schwarzenegger, D Donna Karan, and many more. Roy is a business performance coach who has worked with companies, organizations, and groups to dramatically increase tangible and measurable results, sharing tips and strategies to greatly improve performance, reduce waste, and increase profit. Using principles learned in his years of working with professional athletes and CEOs, Roy will demonstrate the keys to mind mastery and performance. You don't need to be an athlete or a CEO to take advantage of Roy's ideas to change your life. At the age of 25, Roy realized he was not the person he wanted to become. That's when he decided to make a change in his life. Since the startling realization, he went from broke to making six figures, homeless to buying his first home, and depressed to feeling fulfilled. So first off, Roy, I just want to say thank you. I've been following you for a minute now, and I just want to say thank you for taking the time. I know you're a busy man. You got books, talks, you're
Mhm.
working content, you got podcasts, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I've been following you and heard a lot of good things about you. Just a little update on that bio, just for some sustenance. We're at a seven-figure level now, bought my first seven-figure company in 2022. And just everything comes down to how you think about yourself and how you communicate to others. And if you can lock down those two things, you can win in any realm, whether that's sports, whether that's health, whether that's business. It's all the same thing, and it starts right here, man.
Yeah, I've heard you, first of all, congratulations. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Huh?
And I've heard you talk about the mind being responsible for like it's like 90% of performance. And like as someone who's a hooper, I know you were a hooper.
Yeah.
Um, at the highest levels, everyone has a skill, but it's the ones who they just operate on a different level mentally, and you can pick that up as soon as you're in their presence.
Yeah.
Um, and in my opinion, I think if you're working towards something, you're an athlete.
Mhm.
Um, but how do you define mindset?
Well, if you actually look at the word mindset, it's the setting of your mind, right? And if you look at, a lot of these buzzwords and these books, you'll hear things like mindset, you'll hear things like mindfulness. And, I was at an event one time and someone was like, well, you need to work on your mindfulness. And I was like, well, what is the mind full of? Right. And she was like, I never thought of it that way. And the mind is full of the past, the present, and the now moment. It's full of time. And the setting of that time is just a conversation you're having. Okay. So as we talk about the mind and we dive into things now, I look at the mind in at an ontological way. And I know that psychology is huge right now and everybody wants to know the psychology behind things, but I want to get access to things, right? I don't want to just talk about confidence. I want to get access to confidence. And there's a small distinction there in a concept of confidence and actually being confident. And the way to actually be confident is to figure out the syntax, the language, the words that give you access to confidence. So the mind is full of the past, the present, and the future. And the setting of the mind is the language that you have about your past, about your future, because that language is going to dictate how you act in the present moment 100% of the time.
So you would attribute that big switch that you had when you were 25 and athletes you've worked with
Mhm.
taking control over their mindsets
Mhm.
just by using language.
Language. And it's hard because the first foundation to setting your mind is taking full responsibility for everything. And that's a hard thing and a hard pill for people to swallow. But until you take responsibility for your own language and your own experience, then you can't get a hold of it and have any chance of changing it or changing how things occur to you. And we'll talk about occurrence later. But if, for example, I was pushing my 1987 Honda Civic on the freeway, tears in my eyes, mad, wasn't talking to my parents at the time. And that was what changed my life because when I was pushing that car, something clicked in my head like, no, Roy, this is your fault. And I don't actually think that that was new language for me. I think that was past language that was pressed in me from my dad growing up talking about responsibility. But we'll talk about the setting of the mind. It's really just language, and you have essentially two types of languages. You have a default language that's your what's in psychology they just call your triggers, what just automatically comes out based on what people are saying or what's happening in the outside world. And then you have creative language where you create what you say and what the syntax and how you're going to experience that in the moment so that you act in the way that you want to act.
I think one of the coolest things about what you just said there is the creative language and the subconscious language.
Mhm.
And something that is inspiring is that change is possible, like
Mhm.
on a neural level.
Yeah.
Like you can literally change your pathways and your brain
Yeah.
structures just by using that creative language.
Yeah.
So that's really awesome because a lot of times I feel like people don't think change is possible, but
Mhm.
in your experience, is your subconscious language just like you're just at that level now, like from when you were 25, just from
Mhm.
from reinforcing
Mhm.
those creative language pathways.
Yeah.
Now your subconscious is telling you like how to operate.
Yes. So it's funny you asked that. I was just watching a video of these two super smart high IQ like physicists talking about is free will an actual thing? And what they came to the conclusion was is that free will, you don't have free will, but as you expand your language over time and choose your experience, then you end up having free will based on what you decide to say to yourself, right? And in neuroscience, to give you a point of reference, they call this readiness potential. So a lot of times we think we make our decisions, right? Like I made the decision and you made the decision to do this podcast, right? And um, but that's not really what happens. What happens is we have a outside stimulus, and then our brain makes a decision to do or not to do it or whatever to do before we become aware of the decision. So every decision you ever made in your life, your brain made before you became aware of it. And you thought you made the decision because you became aware of it, early, but really your brain made that decision. And your brain patterns that control your actions are connected to the same patterns that control perception. So your brain already made that decision based on the presetting of the language. We call that how it occurred to you. So if something occurs to you as threatening, you're going to act threatening. If something occurs to you as scary, you're going to act fearful. And the only way to get a hold of your actions and decisions is to get a hold of how things occur to you. And the only way to get a hold of how things occur to you is to get a hold of your language. So it seems that we have free will if we speak and talk and change how things occur to us with intention. So intention is our key to changing our mindsets in that sense.
So on the topic of intention and
Mhm.
language to change our mindset and start operating at a higher level,
Mhm.
do you think it's ever beneficial to be lenient with yourself and let yourself deviate and or no?
Yes. Um, there has to be some room to break patterns, right? If you're just always on autopilot and automatic all the time, then maybe there might be some things that you miss in chasing your goal. So when, I do this work with people, the first thing we do is figure out what the default language is. Like, what's the automatic subconscious language and thinking that comes, right? Because you can't change something till you're aware what's there. And a lot of it is unconscious, right? And so once we know what's there, then you can have a choice in doing that or doing something different. But where your question is genius is there is this realm of being so present that that you get into a flow state and you're not even going based on pattern. You're
Yeah.
just going straight present, straight flow. Athletes will call that being in the zone, right? And I teach athletes all the time how to manufacture getting in the zone immediately, right away. It's a secret of mine that I've figured out that I've never seen anyone figure out. And what you do is we talked about the language, right? You can shut off your language in your head. You can shut it off. And when it's off, so many possibilities of patterns and fluid movement and like kind of unbounded action can happen. And then you can add those new data sets to your new default language if things go in a way that you liked.
So you said the first thing you do with a lot of clients is you work on their language.
Mhm,
Do you take into account phone usage
mhm,
and music
mhm,
eh, as well? Because sometimes I feel like I'm not
mhm,
even thinking. Like I'm literally like I'm just scrolling
mhm.
and I'm blank and I'm not thinking. Like,
Yeah.
is that a part of the process as well? Like right now I got my phone on grayscale
Uh-huh.
so I can lock in.
No, yeah, that helps.
Um, yeah. So could you speak on that a little bit?
Well, in order to get into for lack of better terms, right now, a flow state, I'll just mean like any state to take action or do something or do something with intention, you need to have the chemicals present to do that, right? So when it comes to the brain, you have the hardware, you have the software, and then you have the electrical connections. Okay. If you don't have the dopamines, the epinephrines, the norepinephrines to go into an action state, you're gonna really struggle to set intentions. And even if you set intentions, you're gonna really struggle to follow through. And what happens is we all have a different amount of bandwidth. Like I'm lucky, I have a ton. Like I didn't do nothing special. My parents, right? I was able to, two people ended up having sex that had me, and so I have a lot of bandwidth. So I guess the first thing I should say is know yourself. You got to know thyself. I can have a whole bunch of different inputs and get things done. Most people can't do that. So I
I
would
can I
recommend,
interrupt you real quick?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you said know yourself.
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of people don't know themselves because they're stuck in these circles and
Yeah.
they're dependent.
Hmm.
What do you think is necessary to get to know yourself?
Hmm.
Um, Me personally, I gotta be alone.
Yeah.
Because everything comes out when you're alone. You have no one to validate your
Yeah.
actions. You just are you. So how did you get to know yourself? Was it when you were pushing the car when you were literally by yourself on the freeway? So
Yeah.
could you speak what I'm
So
saying?
this is extremely difficult. It took me years. Um, I would say the first thing is you want to push yourself to see what you're capable of, right? A lot of people will say okay, I think this will be the best way to explain this. There's an idea called the efficiency frontier, probably one of the best ideas I've read about in the last year. And what happens is, let's say let me give an example of a efficiency frontier. Let's say you have a kid who never got any attention from girls, right? And maybe one time a girl says, "Oh, that guy's muscular." So he decides, "Yeah, I'm gonna go to the gym." He starts working out, he starts eating well, he gets a little muscle. And then the girl who's his friend, who he's been in the friend zone, notices the muscle and says, "Oh, he's got some like, Ryan, you got some biceps going there. It looks
Hmm.
good." Touches him. And guys are extremists. So that's like, oh, this working out stuff works. So then he becomes extreme. He starts eating super healthy, starts lifting way more. Then he starts getting attention from girls, right? So he's going up on the efficiency frontier. But at some point, because guys are super extreme, they might start taking steroids, or they might start working out too hard, or they might start doing too much. Then um the efficiency frontier drops off to where girls aren't into too much buffness. They don't want someone who's too aggressive or always at the gym, right? So this efficiency frontier curve works with everything from money, right? Maybe, you want to make 10 grand a month or 100 grand a month. But, we look up to Elon and Mark Zuckerberg, but these guys have to pay 50 million for security. That means you have threats on your life all the time. Do you really want that? And so the first thing to understand is you want to figure out what's efficient for you. And you can, once you understand the efficiency frontier, then you can ask yourself, okay, how much money do I really, really want? Like, I don't need too much. How much muscle or how fit or what do I really want? And then you'll start to notice as you work towards things, oh, I have a really high work rate. This may be part of my genes, You can look at your parents to tell, what was your dad doing? But you also got to look at the men on your mother's side, or if you're a woman, you got to look at those things. There's also a really good test that I like. It's called the Kolbe Index, Kolbe. And the Kolbe Index is a conative test. It's not cognitive, it's conative. And conative just means how you take action. Okay, so to tell you, you take action from this way or that way. And I actually like a lot of these tests. I'm not super sure how accurate they are, but like I took another one called 12 Steps Hormonal, and I found out I was high testosterone, I'm high dopamine, and I'm low oxytocin. So that means I'm super high risk taking. Um, so obviously I'm going to be more entrepreneurial, right? But I think we live in a time where entrepreneurship is sexy. So everyone tries to hop in on, and they get to a certain level in the efficiency curve, and then it starts to have diminishing returns. So
Because they're not operating within
because
themselves.
because they're not operating within themselves, you're not
Yeah.
gonna. And it's like, people will come to me and say, I'm gonna get like you in 6 months. I'm like, but dude, these two superhumans had sex and made me. There's no way you're gonna be like me ever on this level in this thing. And
Hmm.
there's no way I'm gonna be able to be creative or musically or dance like you. And um, I just think that you should figure out what your strengths are and then figure out what the efficiency curve is for you and work on health, wealth, love, and happiness, man.
Hmm. Yeah. I I'd also think that getting to know yourself is just an accumulation of going through hard shit.
Yeah.
And if you play sports from a young age, like I did, I'm so thankful that I
Yeah.
did. Because, like Kobe said, sport is the greatest teacher for life.
Yeah.
And I totally agree. Like a lot of the hindrances uh I developed in basketball, like
Mhm.
I would overwork, maybe due to a lack of self-confidence. I
Mhm.
was non-next play, I would dwell and it would have a cascading effect on next plays.
Mhm.
And like selfishness. I don't know if that's from AAU culture or watching too many mixtapes, but I was always just trying to get buckets. And
Yeah.
I think I was more drawn to the skill side because I could just work. I could just be by myself and work.
Yeah.
Um,
People can't do that. Some people can only work in a group.
yeah.
So you got to really know like what makes you happy. Like be present in that moment. Like when you're working on your own, like, do you like this? Can you do this every day? Can you do this on a mundane day? Can you just do this and like feel joy? Like some people can't do that, right? Like I go to the studio, do a podcast, and then I'll bring a friend in and they're like, yo, look at these lights, and they freak out. It's just everyone's different, but at the same time, some skills you do want to also try to cultivate.
Mhm. I think one of the biggest hindrances, though, that I had was just timing, like
Yeah,
knowing when to go,
yeah,
when to just kick it.
yeah,
Um, I don't know if that's due to my Gen Z
yeah.
upbringing and the clipified environment that we live. Um, but you harped on it a little bit earlier. But could you
Mhm.
discuss the importance of timing and patience and waiting your turn? Like as an athlete entrepreneur, someone just looking to just max themselves.
Yeah. Timing is everything, man. Time is literally the only material you have. I would say time and energy, and they're linked, is the only thing you have to create the life you want, right? Um, to go scientifically, I wish I understood time as a kid because I played basketball, but I was a little skinny, unathletic kid until I was like 25. And my dad used to always say, like, wait your time, you'll grow into your body. And I was like, bro, I'm 23, I'm 20. What are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
dudes were like beasts at 16. I didn't understand the genes, and he did because he been through it and I didn't listen. And you have your genome, you have your genes, which if then you have your epigenome, and then you have sirtuins, right? And to kind of give an idea of kind of what that means is your genes is the piano playing the music. Your epigenetics is the person playing the piano. And the sirtuins is the coach telling the epigenome what to play. And so when you give a specific adaptation imposed demands, right? So when you give a specific demand over time, you might have a dormant gene that's like a next level gene inside of your genome that isn't turned on until you do the work for some years. That epigene tells that tells that tells that piano to play the gene, and then next thing you know, you could have had a 50-inch vertical and you never knew, right? And
Yeah.
that's a hard part too with this timing thing, because sometimes you don't even know you have it until you just put the work in. And so I talked about this on my show, the Bros to Men show, is just do stuff. Sometimes you just got to get out there and do stuff and get feedback first, and then you'll learn, what you like or what you should do later. But um timing's like a bag of popcorn, man. You put it in the microwave, and some of the corns pop early and some pop last minute, but everyone will pop. You just got to be patient, put in your time, and understand that tiny sprouts will get burned in the hot sun. Sometimes you're just not ready. That's why it's not coming to you.
Yeah.
It's the whole David and Goliath story. While David was on the back of the mountain fighting lions and tigers and bears with feces on his shoes, at the same time, his Goliath was being made for him to go and conquer. And so there is a law called the law of opposites. It's if you didn't learn anything from the Jedi, you need to realize that when one side is growing, the other side is growing as well. So as you're getting better and working on yourself and becoming and chasing mastery and whatever it is you do, your Goliath is getting made on the other side, and you just got to make sure that you're ready. And you don't got to get ready if you stay ready, and yeah, your time is coming 100% of the time, man. Every time.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Also, I don't know, for me, like I know you said you have a really, really high work capacity,
Mhm.
but for myself, like I have to work and and then I have to just sit. Like I
Yeah.
just have to sit and think and just let myself get parasympathetic,
Hmm.
um, and just maintain that foresight. Because like with the phone, especially, it's just like the perception of time is so distorted. Like
Yeah.
I want stuff that I have to work 5 years for. Like that's what I'm starting to shift my mind to. Because
Hmm.
when I started doing the whole online thing, I felt like I would turn myself into a cog in the wheel, and I was just producing stuff that I really wasn't passionate about just to do it.
Yeah.
So I think that's important too, to just always maintain that
Yeah.
foresight down the line. Like, where am I trying to get? Where am I at?
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Just keep working, relax, you're good.
This thing is a drug, man.
Yeah.
And what's the number one rule of drug dealing? Never get high in your own, right?
Yeah.
So, I have an assistant that posts. Sometimes I post, but I'll allow myself. I guess here's kind of a hack is if you like, let's say you're on a diet, right? And you have a cheat day coming. There's something about knowing that cheat day is coming that can keep you disciplined through the week. I kind of have the same thing with my phone. I don't even look at no socials till maybe like 12 p.m. and I'll kind of scroll for a minute and then lock back into work. Um, but you got to really lock in your day. So like let me give you my day. I I go to sleep late and I wake up maybe it's considered late, but maybe like 8 a.m., 8:30, right? I get up and I understand that most people can only work an hour to 2 hours of deep work. I'm lucky I can do 3 hours of deep work. I go straight into deep work 3 hours after, I get all my, stuff together, like, my yoga nidra and all of that stuff. So by 9 o'clock, deep work. Okay, what deep work do I need to do? 10, 11, 12. At 12 o'clock, I'll maybe have, a little bit of protein or some electrolytes and a little bit of like caffeine. Then I hit the gym. After the gym, whatever work I got to do, there's light work. I don't have to really super think and all of that stuff. Now it's like 2, 3 o'clock, and I can like do things like this. I can, do things that doesn't take me too much of thinking. Then I start to, wind down. Then I start to do stuff I love, like reading. Right now I'm reading the Book of Est. Um, you know, then later I start to doom scroll. Like save it for later, man. Get your stuff done. Don't let your deep work be you looking at, Kendrick and Drake. Like I have a whole group chat talking about Kendrick and Drake, and I'm like, I'll catch up on it later, man. Like
Mhm.
I'm not saying you don't need to watch this stuff and know what's going on because it's good to know because you want to be social and be able to have conversations to connect with people if you know what's going on. But I can catch up on that group chat later. Your deep work is the most important thing in your life. You got 2 to 3 hours every day. And if you take in those 2 or 3 hours and listen, if you just get 3 things done of intention towards your goals every day, you're gonna get there quick. And it doesn't have to be no super hard working thing. And when you don't work hard, you feel guilty. And don't be a lazy ass.
Mhm.
And then lastly, I do have free days. I never have free workout days. I work out every day. But some
Yeah.
days I have free days where I'm just chilling. And those are the days I'm walking around, I'm thinking. And in the free days is when the great ideas come. Like I had a crazy good
Yeah.
idea yesterday. And so getting parasympathetic is super good. Again, I have really good vagal tone. So I can be ready to fight and then be chilling, kiss holding a baby in 5 minutes after that. Because of the environment I grew up in. But yeah, man, all of that stuff is huge.
So you talked a little bit about your day. You
Hmm.
talked about your free days.
Hmm.
And those are the days when you find solitude, and that's
Hmm.
when you are most creative.
Hmm.
But you also talked about being social.
Yeah.
In your experience as someone who's very successful, and I know shared stages and you've worked with people who are extremely successful.
Yeah,
How do they marry those two? Because I think they're very necessary and probably equally important.
yeah. You know, it's weird. Successful people are always trying to talk about how like they were like alone and worked hard and didn't go out. Nah, man, you need to be social.
Yeah.
You know, it's different for everyone. You know, I know there's these buzzwords like introvert and extrovert, but if you actually, if you, this bothers me because people just talk so much stuff about these terms. If you actually read about the guy who invented it, who was Carl Jung, introvert just means that you look at the world based on your internal state, or you look at the world based on the external world. It has nothing to do with like recharging your batteries. Let me tell you something about everyone. Everyone has to recharge their batteries, right? And so, but you got to be social. Like human beings, we evolutionize in groups of 100, 150. Like you really need to get out. If you don't, you're going to be sad, you're going to be depressed. Um, and even at a low level, if you don't get like super sad, even at a low level, you aren't going to be as creative or be able to get work done like you really want to.
Mhm.
So I recommend everyone has a social group, um, you know, maybe pertaining to the work you do. And you want to make sure that you're planning in your week, in your day to go out. I didn't drink for I didn't have my first drink till I was 25. And then I didn't drink probably till I was like 30. But now that I'm learning to be social, like I still don't drink, but I'll grab I'll get a glass, I'll hold it for the 4 to 6 hours and sip. Like don't be weird. Don't be the person who's an extreme on the stand away from people thing. You really want to be social, learn to talk to people, because at the end of the day, this whole life stuff is people choosing people. It don't matter how good you are if you can't, it don't matter as a player how good you are if you can't get on the court because you can't be cool with your coach. It doesn't matter how great you are as an actor if you can't get on that stage. You need to learn to manufacture opportunity by being social and learning how to talk to people and getting people to like you. And this took me so long to learn until my dad asked me to watch this movie called Imitation Game about the scientist who broke the
Yeah.
German
Enigma
system.
code.
He realized that he had to learn to be social because these people would literally shut down anything he did just because he was an a-hole. Or he wasn't even an a-hole. They just felt he was an a-hole. Right. And so being social is something that we all need to do. And, not too much, not too much, but you got to get
Yeah.
out. You got to be around people. You got to be talking to people. You got to be touching people. You need that oxytocin to, to, um, to help you with your dopamine spikes. So being social is key, man.
So we talked about how you spend time, the
Yeah.
balance of solitude and being social. But the reality is everybody has a clock and it's a
Yeah.
race against time.
Yeah.
Whether we accept it or not, we're gonna die.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, what is your relationship with death and
Mhm.
how does it shape your outlook on life?
Yeah. Um, I was reading I think it was the Myth of Sisyphus. It was a book by Camus, who's a great philosopher, and he said this quote. He said, "The only philosophical question worth contemplating is suicide." And then he talked about how he went outside and he was looking at the stars, and he realized how small he was, how insignificant he was compared to the universe. And then, I'm like the goofy guy who's like walks outside. I was looking at the stars and I was like, damn, like that, I wanted to feel what he felt in that moment. And then it hit me like that is what he was talking about. What he was talking about is king, peasant, bum, rich, wealthy, beautiful, ugly. Bro, we all go to the same place. You're going to the dirt. They're throwing dirt on your face.
Mhm.
Like that's where we're all going. So none of this really matters, right? None of this really matters. And The only thing that matters is death, and since it's the adversary that's going to beat us all, nothing really matters. So you need to really learn to live, and the way to learn to live is to make decisions and live with your death in your mind. Like, how do you want people to look at you? What do you want them saying about you at your funeral, right? And then that's going to be your actions, and that's going to be, for lack of better terms, your brand, your personal brand on earth. Like, you want people to be saying this certain thing when you die. Then also to cure you of any really mental problems. Like, bro, like,
Yeah.
why do you care? Why do you care what people think?
Yeah.
Why do you care about, we care about the dumbest stuff, man. Even me. But but all you gotta do is tell yourself, like, it doesn't matter, you're gonna die. Like, and you might feel it, you might experience it, because that's how, the mind works, is survival, right? You're gonna experience that fear, you're gonna experience this. But if you can really look at something with your death in your mind, you're like, yo, I'm not even gonna die. Like, who cares? Who cares what these people think? It helps you, it helps you be extremely humble, and it helps you act at 100%, but at the same time be detached to those actions. And any athlete, any business owner, just like Donald Trump said, if you can't walk away from something, you don't have a negotiation position. If you can take action, but at the same time not not care or be detached, you're the most dangerous person in the room, on the court, or whatever that is. Like, if you ask Kobe about game winning shots, he's just like, I don't care. Well, I'm gonna get it up. I don't
Yeah.
care. I don't care if I clank that thing. Who
Hmm.
cares? And then you can see that thinking is what made him able to be so productive in those moments, and be so unbounded.
Yeah. I've I've been thinking a lot about death recently, not because I'm suicidal, but because I've been reading a lot of Russian literature. My brother's a writer, so
Yeah.
he kind of feeds me all these things. He's a lot older than me.
Mm,
He's 30. But
yeah.
so like I read like Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, just
Mm,
finished some of those guys, but all the same things, the
mm.
problems in society we have today, they've been around forever.
Yeah. And those
They
dudes are smart, man.
yeah.
All the smart
Um,
people are dead, and we got to read that stuff.
yeah. Yeah, and it's the translation, like it's about religion and
Mm,
money and gambling. Like it's all about the same
same.
stuff,
Yeah.
um, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so with death looming,
Mhm.
it makes me at least, and I'm sure it will make a lot of people listening to
Mm.
just start making goals for themselves and start trying to achieve what they want to set out to do, like where they envision themselves in the future.
Mhm.
But are goals limiting? Because I feel like a strict goal has the potential to constrict your action and not allow you to deviate and
Yeah.
be flexible, which could be necessary to find the path that will ultimately lead you to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that?
They're 100% limiting.
Hmm.
Um, Everything has its opposite, right? You know, Human beings for the most part are limitless, but anything that's limitless is also limited. You know, any one thing you can do to start creating some really deep insights on thing is look at its opposite. So if you look at something and you say, our goal's limiting, yes, but there's also a limitless part of that. And there's always two ends to the same coin. Even though goals are limitless, are limited, it was your choice to make that goal. And there's freedom in choice. Um, but I think one of the issues, and even for myself, is we don't dream big enough. We don't make big enough goals. I had goals that I thought would take forever to do. And then I knocked them out, was like, what is this? I knocked out life goals in like a year. Like, wow. And my mentor's like, you should have made your goals bigger. And so, yes, goals are limiting, but here's kind of how I go at goals. I have a whole term, I call it VOTA, VOTA. You write down the goal, that's the vision. Once you have that vision of the goal, you're going to have a whole ton of obstacles come up in your mind. Write those obstacles down. And when you transform, which is the T, when you transform those obstacles into what you want, is when the goal will be achieved. And at the end of that, also do is called big bat dreaming. So yeah, I might have a goal for 100 million, but sometimes I just sit down in big bat dream where I write down like, I want to make $1 trillion, or I want to fly, or I want to lift 1,000 pounds, like crazy things that you can't do. And I got this idea because I was watching baseball. And what do they do before they go up to bat? They like take
Wind
three
up.
bats. Yeah. Or
Yeah.
they take a heavy bat
Uh-huh.
and so if you big bat dream, it can make your dreams seem a whole lot smaller and a whole lot more believable. And at the end of the day, all this mental shit is just a belief game. That's all it really is. It's you um creating an illusion of control so that you can act in a way to achieve what you want to achieve.
Wow. Awesome. All right. I appreciate you
Mhm.
sharing all this wisdom with the viewers.
Anytime.
But before we wrap it up, do you have any parting words for aspiring athletes? Do you got upcoming books, upcoming talks?
Mhm. So I'm always speaking, always talking. You guys can follow me Instagram or everything at Roy ROY underscore red REDD. Um, I have a book. My latest book is called The Victory Equation, where I break down the exact math to achieve anything. Everything is just math. Math plus marketing equals money. So I break down how you figure out your math and your lead measures so that you can achieve anything. And just a couple things, man. One is, as an athlete, the one thing you need to realize is you're not your mind. A lot of people forget that their mind is a tool like their elbow. You aren't your mind. If your mind says something or if it does something, you need to start looking at it as something you experience rather than something you are. If you're nervous, what is that experience? See, nervous is a concept. It's not an actual thing. It's a fucking definition. But if you actually get in touch with the experience, you start to realize like, oh, I have these sensations in this area of my body. And once you can start using that language of experience rather than concepts, it gives you more power to act, even though that the experience is there. The nervousness becomes more like a rock in your shoe rather than something you are. And that's one. Number two is I'll tell you guys how to lock in and get into the zone, right? You what you want to do is stop your language. There's a cool video where I verified this tool, this kind of mental tool. When Chris Rock was talking to Kobe, I think he was like telling jokes. It was like a playoff game, and Kobe was just staring and couldn't hear him. And they were like, "What was Chris Rock telling you?" He was like, I couldn't even hear him. I was just so locked in." And the reason for that is in neural linguistic programming, you can tell if someone's lying or what part of their brain they're accessing based on their eye movement. And so one day I said, I wonder what would happen if you held your eyes completely still, what part of your brain you would access. And then I did it. And after about 10, 15 seconds, my whole mind went completely blank. I couldn't hear anything and I was just locked into the zone. And so that's the key to rooting yourself into a flow state. At any moment, all you have to do is hold your eyes completely still. And it's actually hard to do because your brain starts screaming for a second, but it's that your eyes start to try to flicker, but just hold them completely still. Allow yourself to still see everything and hold your eyes still. and that'll root you into the now moment. So if you're gonna go out and hit a big shot, get the play from the coach, and then stop talking, go over, sit down, do what you got to do, hold your eyes still, root yourself into that zone. You can use this before you do a show, before you do a podcast, before you read a book, before you do anything. You can root yourself in 30 seconds by just holding your eyes still.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All day.